This scary story occurred on a rainy night in February of 1997. A young woman named Kylie was making the drive back home to reunite with her family. Although Kylie had been very independent for her young age, she had found herself missing her amazing parents these past few years, ever since moving states as soon as she turned 18. The holidays had just passed, and it had been 4 holiday seasons in a row that she spent away from her parents. So she really wanted to make the long drive home to surprise them and make up for that lost time. The problem was that the drive was excruciatingly long. The forecast called for rain, and Kylie hated driving, especially alone, and especially in her beat up little 4-door car. She was surprised it was even still operable at this point. Kylie happened to be a very paranoid person when it came to really anything, so it didn't take much for her anxiety to get the best of her. She knew her parents would be upset at her traveling the long distance alone, but she was out of options, and this was her ticket to reuniting with them. So she put a smile on, put music on her radio, and braved the drive early in the evening. Kylie needed to take this long route to make it home, and it was the most direct line. This was one of those desolate stretches of road that didn't bear many sights, or even life for that matter. There were 2 lanes that made up the road, and a few little sprinklings of small towns throughout. Kylie actually found this perfect, as she could shut her mind off and zone out down this road, as long as her little car held up, of course. With minimal breaks, this route would take her about 10 hours to make it to her parents. At one point during her long trek home, the radio cut to a news outlet informing drivers to remain cognizant as the man that had been terrorizing drivers on this stretch of road was still on the loose. The radio reception hadn't been the best where she was, so a lot of the details got lost through transmission. But Kylie could make out that this man was stealing vehicles, brutally mutilating the drivers, and was considered very dangerous. Kylie's anxiety kicked in, and this couldn't have come at a worse time, as the sun was going down, and she needed to stop to fill her car up with gas. She did not want to stop after hearing this terrifying news broadcast, but she really had no choice. The sun fully went to sleep, and Kylie pulled into a gas station just on the outskirts of a tiny town. This was the first gas station that she had seen in over 50 miles. The gas station was decrepit and looked as if it hadn't been maintained in months. There were 2 pumps, and 1 truck was already getting fueled at one of the pumps. Kylie didn't like the vibe of this gas station, but again, she was out of options. Kylie hesitantly stepped out of her vehicle to fill up her tank. She remained cognizant of her surroundings. She could feel her heart beating in her chest. Kylie peered over to the truck at the other pump. Just as she did, she could see a man in a long trench coat step outside of the vehicle. This was all she could really see of him, as he had the hood of the trench coat up over his head. But the hood was staring right at her, so Kylie really got the sense that the man behind the hood was staring directly at her. She attempted to keep her anxiety in check, but the man made Kylie extremely uncomfortable, as she would periodically glance over at the man while she was filling up her tank, just to find him staring at her. She could tell that there was something off about this entire situation. To get out of the situation, Kylie went into the safety of the gas station, where she was greeted with a sincere smile by the man behind the counter. It might have just been her anxiety, but she could feel the truck driver's eyes following her as she went in. And then it wasn't just his eyes that followed her. Soon after, he went into the gas station as well. As Kylie looked for some snacks, she happened to glance towards the newspapers. She briefly caught a glimpse of an article that was discussing the mysterious man who had been terrorizing this route. Shivers shot down Kylie's spine. She noticed the article recommending nobody drive alone on this long road, especially young women, as they were his primary targets. It had been weeks since the first killing, and no sign of the killer. The shivers stayed down her spine as she felt a terrifying presence behind her. She turned around to confirm the faceless hood of the truck driver staring at her. It was faceless until the man stepped a little more into the light, and she could see him smiling at her, showing just what little teeth he had. The entire setting made Kylie feel uneasy, so without grabbing any snacks, she quickly left the gas station into the rain and hurried back to her car. She removed the nozzle from her gas tank quickly, peeked behind her shoulder, and could see the man still observing her through the cracked gas station window, smirking. Kylie lost her breath, and she jumped into the driver's seat before locking herself into the safety of her little car. She attempted to start her car, but the old vehicle wouldn't start. Kylie's heart began hammering as she just wanted to get back on the road. In this moment, she regretted taking her beat-up little car. She tried once more. The engine sputtered a few times before giving out. Kylie's internal instincts kicked in, and she glanced towards the window of the gas station. The creep was still looking at her. This time, the smile was gone. The truck driver looked deranged as he began slamming his hand against the gas station window. He looked like he was putting a curse on her by the way that he was yelling. She could see the gas station employee pick up the telephone as he looked at the crazed man, terrified. Kylie, in a panic, twisted the key in the ignition, prayed that her car would start. It let out a few more sputters before the engine luckily kicked on. Just as she got her car into drive, the hooded man exited the gas station, still hollering in her direction as she safely peeled out of the gas station lot. Kylie let out a panicked sigh. She could feel her body literally shaking from the fear of the whole ordeal. It made it worse that she had been all alone in her car. She took a moment to take big deep breaths to calm herself down as she was back on the road and the gas station shrank in her rearview mirror. The moment of security didn't last long though, as she saw the headlights of the truck at the gas station power on. Kylie once again swallowed her heart as the truck driver caught up to her car rather quickly. As soon as the truck neared the back of Kylie's car, the man began honking his horn like a lunatic. Kylie began hysterically crying to herself as the crazy man's truck was as close as it could be to her car without physically hitting it. She thought she had been safe after leaving the gas station, but she was clearly still in danger. It made it all the more dangerous as the rain continued beating down from the sky. The crazy man began flashing his lights into Kylie's vehicle. She could tell that this was his way of making her lose control of the wet streets. But Kylie had no other option than to step on the gas pedal as hard as she could. She prayed that the gas station employee had notified the police, and that they would save her, as her car was clearly no match for the truck. After a few miles of the truck tailgating, the psycho began ramming into the back of Kylie's little car. Each time the truck would hit her, he would honk his loud truck horn, and she could feel her head getting whiplashed around. Kylie could not stop crying and screaming for the man to stop. She also could not stop thinking about her parents and how they would have scolded her for driving this long stretch of road all on her own. Out of options, Kylie began looking around her front seats for any sort of weapon to protect herself with. The man continued to ram into the back of her vehicle, and to her surprise, she noticed the gleam of a knife blade just under the front passenger seat. She could not recall having a knife in her vehicle, but she was running out of time, and she couldn't help but be grateful at the fact that she did have some sort of hope. She had something to actually defend herself against this lunatic. She leaned over to pick the knife up from the passenger side floor, but in all the chaos, Kylie veered her car into the opposite lane. She tried to readjust, but it was too late. The wet roads forced her car to flip uncontrollably. Kylie immediately got ejected from her seat, half her body smashed through the front window before her little car folded around a giant tree. The truck slowly pulled over into the crash site, Smoke had taken up the entire area. The little car had been completely destroyed, and the top half of Kylie's body was barely intact after the windshield separated her lower half. She was clearly killed on impact. A good 20 minutes after the crash, police pulled up next to the truck. The hooded man stepped out of it and into the rain to talk with the police officers on scene. The police officers could see that the truck driver had been distraught, and they explained that the gas station clerk had called them and notified them of everything. As they all inched closer to Kylie's totaled vehicle, it was evident that both people in the vehicle had been killed. The police radioed into medical that they're going to need assistance for 2 dead bodies. They then informed their small little police station that it was a tragedy to catch him this way, but at last, the man who was terrorizing drivers on this desolate stretch of road had been killed in the backseat of a car accident.